Hey, everybody. Tammy Ebright here, and welcome to Tuesday Tips to Unleash Your Amazing. Today, my special guest is my friend and fellow widow, Natalie Lancaster. Natalie is a change leader, and she is the CEO of her company, Lancaster Leadership, and she helps leaders determine their leadership style and lead from the heart. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm so excited to be here today. At Lancaster Leadership, we do try to work with different companies and help you kind of find out the true leader that you are and how to work with your team. So I'm super excited to share some Tuesday tips with Tammy and to see if I can help you in any way with your own leadership and just finding out who you should be as a leader.
I love that. So let's just dive on back into that, Natalie. What are the different types of leadership styles?
Well, there's several different types of leadership, and I wanted to start first with really defining what a leader is, because I think that's so important in our conversation today. I think when you think of the traditional meaning of leadership, it's important to remember that it's been defined historically as a specific person in charge of a team, helping them move forward, figuring out what your mission and vision is and what your top priorities are. But honestly, I've done a lot of research lately, Tammy, on servant leadership. And that was the original kind of leadership that I had when I owned my own business and in managing title companies. And basically, that's so much more about just becoming who you are and who you're meant to be. So Warren Bennis has my favorite leadership quote ever. And he says that becoming a leader is synonymous with becoming yourself. It's precisely that simple and also that difficult. So what I want to talk about today are what the different kinds of leadership styles are, which you'll recognize in yourselves, but also helping you try to figure out where do you fit in, and as the leader over a team, how do you convert who you are as a leader to meet the situation at hand. So with that, I'll talk a little bit about the different kinds of leaderships. One of them is, there's a test that I'm going to share the resource with Tammy we were talking about, and it really helps you identify your personal leadership style by answering questions. And you'll kind of see that you may be a combination, but it's basically based on the color schemes that are used in a lot of personality profiles. So they're green leaders, yellow leaders, red leaders, and blue leaders. So just to give you a high level, a green leader is kind of what I call a team leader. They work hard to bring everyone together and help them collaborate and work together. They're very rah-rah for the company, encouraging, gregarious, outgoing, and they help building relationships and seeing who works together best. So they're really people, and sometimes not as involved in the details or the metrics or the numbers and the measures, which you also need, but they have a lot of attention to building those relationships. Yellow leaders have more like drive and ambition. They help people move into place to be successful leaders, and they kind of lead by example. They keep their teams very focused on the outcome and what they're trying to achieve and how to make that a reality. So those are kind of our yellow leaders. The red leaders are very logical. They're looking at the measures, the matrix, the numbers. They know what has to happen. They understand in a project what needs to happen next. And they're very good at aligning everybody up to meet specific conditions and achieve results immediately and how to make that effectively. They're very logic-based in their leadership. And then blue leaders are kind of like me and Tammy, I think. We're dreamers, encouragers, inspirers. We really are the idea makers, and we have to surround ourselves with people that can help those ideas come into life. And so to do that, we're very good at encouraging others and also at the same time putting teams together that will support us for where we're trying to go. So when we talk about what it is to be a true leader in your own organization, I want you to keep that in mind. So you do need to have a little people skills. You do need some of that red logic to be able to have the measures and metrics. You want to have the yellow, which is kind of the actor to make it go happen. And of course, you want to have the blue. You want to be able to set your vision and create your dreams. I've been doing a lot of reading, Tammy, lately, and many of you have probably heard about Brene Brown and her newest book, Dare to Lead. I know you were talking about it, I believe, last week, how much you enjoyed reading it and how much it changed your life, just seeing some of her encouragement.
So Natalie, can we chat a little bit about this information you just shared real quick?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. One of the things that I'm noticing is you're sharing those with me, they don't actually correspond with the typical like DISC, although the definitions were similar. I feel like they're bringing in a little bit of the communication styles as well as values behind that leader to put them into different categories.
Yes, that's exactly true. And also, I felt like the colors don't necessarily line up with what
Mhm.
you see in a personality profile. So they're calling them different things, which I really struggled with. But I think that for the purposes of our conversation, to kind of help you identify what kind of leader you are, it's a very helpful quiz that I recommend you take. And then you just kind of see, and you'll see when you take it, how you're going to have a little bit of all the different personality types, so to speak, in your communication style.
Yes, and you do with even with the DISC and the values. It is definitely a everybody has the different qualities within them. None of us fit into like a neat little box. We're all individual, and especially when we do, like you said, become a servant leader and take our mask off and be our authentic self, for sure.
And that's the important thing, is really continuing to work as you are, as into becoming your authentic self and being kind of vulnerable and transparent. Because the single most important part of a leader is to build trust within your organization. In fact, I've been working with a corporation right now that just completed their Great Places to Work. They did an employee engagement survey last year. And the number one thing that they're really focused on this year moving forward is building trust and keeping very open communication. And that's not always easy. You have to show that you're a person and that you're vulnerable. And it's so important to stop and listen and really have some empathy with your team and understand what they're going through. And you may have to respond a different way. Sometimes you have to be really strong, and sometimes you might want to be a little bit soft. It just depends on what the circumstances are as you go through.
Yeah, for sure. That's really important. That people feel heard, that you're listening to, that you have your own vision, but you're also listening to what your team needs and helping them to either achieve their goals, at least at the very least, that they're being heard.
Exactly. And when they feel that you're listening, they're so much more encouraged to support your effort. And also, sometimes they can give you ideas that maybe you had not considered on a project, and it helps you kind of course correct and realign. And when you've got that buy-in after you've built that trust with your teams, they're going to be so eager to help you move forward, and they'll do anything for you. They're so loyal because they feel like they have been heard, to your point, and they're helping you support the mission. You should never have more than 2 or 3 priorities in your teams and in your businesses, because then you lose focus. Everybody working for you should be able to articulate exactly what you're trying to get done. And that being said, it's also to support the team members in their whole lives, not just their work life, working towards that work-life balance and knowing that they can trust you if they need to come to you if something's happening at home. So I think that's really
Yes,
important too.
I would agree. Um, HR.com did this survey of the different teams out there. And I thought it was really interesting because it came back that only 16% of people that were on teams were happy on their teams. And I think
Wow.
that's because so many leaders are like leading from here instead of leading from here.
Yeah. Well, and that's more about servant leadership. So when I started my job at Stewart Title, at the very beginning, I became a branch manager just because I was a good escrow officer. For those of you that have been in the real estate or mortgage business, you'll understand. They really didn't train us. They just said, you have a lot of business, go open a branch. And that's what we did. And way back then in the early 80s, I read a book called Managing with Passion. And it's one of the resources that I'll share with Tammy. But that book changed my life. But basically, it was around servant leadership, which is back in style again. I just finished an article that I'm going to be giving with the American Land Title Association all about servant leadership. And it is about leading from the heart, being more vulnerable and trusting and listening and being open with your staff so that you're all lined up together to be successful in your business. And that just helps you become the better person that you are. And once you evolve personally through working on your own coaching and reading and studying who it is to be you, then the people will be attracted to you, and you're being honest and vulnerable with them to move forward. You're mindful of what their needs are, and you're helping them have some tips to help them So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but you can't build that trust if you don't take the time to make a personal connection. But I always say it's around commitment and decision. You have to make the commitment to really be all in, to play the game with your coworkers and help them be successful. And if you can build that connection, it just takes one link to start. And then over time, it evolves and it grows, and you'll be a better and better leader. And you'll be more comfortable in what you have to do. And again, you have to be able to look at the circumstance, see what's happening, whether it's working on a project, doing a really successful performance appraisal, where you have to be honest and specific with how to help them become a better person. And sometimes those are painful conversations. We tend to shy away from that. That's one of the things I wanted to touch on today. Take time to really write down what it is you want to share when you're doing a performance appraisal or having a difficult conversation with your team, because if they know that they've already built that trust with you and they know that you're going to be there to support them, they will listen to you because they want to be a better person, and you're trying to help them get to the next goal in their business and in their own personality.
So when you're coaching somebody on your team, then you should have a written plan to prepare in advance and have your plan in place of, what your vision is, so that you're coming at it from a heart, not just, off the top of your head, and making sure that you're giving them positive feedback at the same time as you're giving them corrective action.
Exactly. It should never be negative, even though it can be impactful. You want to choose your words. And I do with my clients, I usually recommend that, role playing and really, do both roles. Be the other person. How do those words feel? And then be the manager sharing with your staff, the things you have to say. They need that feedback. But again, it should never be negative. You want to try to start with things that they do very, very well, and then encourage them to kind of work more on a few things that you've picked out, and maybe they need training or coaching. I find that for performance appraisals, I like to come in and work with companies and do executive coaching and managerial coaching before they get to that, because they really are good at, you don't want to say things that are so negative and contradictory. You want to be able to give them purposeful insight to help them become better leaders in their own right. So I think that's really important. So that's go ahead.
Everybody spends a ton of time at work, and having a work-life balance, as you might say, isn't always the case. There's going to be more times that sometimes your home life is going to be more balanced and your work life is going to be more balanced. And as a leader, I think that it's important that you are listening again to your team, but also understanding that at home they may have this one challenge that's going on that may affect them, and if you're patient and you give them the resources and the support during that hard time, that you're going to have this employee team member for life that's going to be loyal to you. And what is a company's biggest expense? Their employees. So it's so much easier to empower those that you have around you than it is to train somebody that you don't really know what their stuff is when they're coming in. But if you have somebody that that is a great person and a great employee, and they're having a little bump, then you want to make sure that you're on all hands on deck and helping them to grow through that.
Well, and absolutely. And since Tammy mentioned that she and I are both widows, we both had events like that where our companies had to really support us and let us keep working and follow through. And I know for me, it was life-changing. My husband was sick at MD Anderson, and they even gave me my very own office with a key so that I could work and continue meeting with my clients as I needed to over the phone or doing Zoom and things like this. So it's really very important. And it helps the individuals on your team also feel that they're part of the family and that you do really care about them. And that is so important. And don't look away when it's difficult, when they tear up. Really try to work through that together if it's a difficult point. And again, choosing your words, practicing your words, writing them down, and then listening to yourself really helps you, share the message in a positive way. Mm-hmm. To your point, I think it's just so important to try to think about, who do you want on your team? You chose this person. I mean, you went through interviews, you chose them, and they are so hard to replace. even if they hit a bump in the road. That's an important point, Tammy, is like help them get through that by encouraging them and inspiring them to be all that they're supposed to be in their lives as well.
Yeah, it's important.
I also think that training is so important too. You know, everyone wants you to come in and work and they want you to take on new projects and different roles. But again, it's so important to have realistic training, on the job training, and learning that training by person is so important. One of my successes as a change manager is that when I go in and work on a project, we try to align all the change management around the roles, not just what does everyone need to know about this new process or technology, but also what do we need to know in your role, Tammy, and my role. They're very different roles. What do we specifically need to know to be more successful in our jobs? And if we have the answers to our questions, then when you go in and do your job and you have the training that you need, you feel so more self-assured and you're so much more willing to give 110% to your company to be there for them.
Training is really important. I had an interaction at Sandler the other day with a leader who was frustrated with, millennials get this really bad rap about, this generation, but I think that all previous generations say that about the next generation regardless. And people keep coming to them and want more training. Well, if they're asking for more training and then they're telling you what they need. So you need to make sure that you're giving them more training. Now, at some point, if they're not trainable and they're still having trouble, then that's going to be a decision in leadership that you're going to have to make that either is transitioning them into a different role. Maybe it's not a role fit, or, making the decision that they're not a fit for your company.
I think that's very true. Although sadly, I have to add that training, I think the reason I've been successful is that sometimes training is one size fits all and they don't consider the roles. And really, even though you're learning a new technology, the training should be customized by role of what that person has to do within the technology. What a president or CEO needs to know is very different than what somebody needs to know in the processing side of the technology. So that's something we try to keep. I did want to close with a few more tips to kind of share with you to really think about who you are as a leader, who you want to become as a leader, and how to work with your coworkers. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes you want to be strong, but sometimes you want to be soft in your conversations with them to try to lead the way or encourage them. You always want to be appropriate, but you don't want to be disrespectful or critical. And you need to be free to let everyone be who they're supposed to be within the realm of what's acceptable within your business, of course. Sometimes I say you have to be tender, sometimes you have to be tough. And sometimes it takes assertion and sometimes reservation. It's like those are the same pieces of the seesaw, and you have to be really careful trying to reach that steady place. Also, it's important to think about personality styles and who's going to work best. If you're putting a project team together or even a focus group, you want to have the alpha and the omega, and yet you want to have people that are going to be compatible to work side by side. And also, when you have a critical conversation, as we talked about, really think through that scenario and take notes about what do you need to say, what do you need to tell them, how can you be a more effective leader by sharing with them what they need to know so they can be a more effective team member. That's important too. It's a real challenge to be encouraging and inspirational, and also to be able to give the moral support that you need and course correct when you get a little bit off the scope of duty. The best thing is to always just express your true self, just like we started out with the original quote. Be the best you that you can be, and then you'll be the best leader that you can be. So don't be afraid to be honest and truthful, to be vulnerable. Not every day is going to be a perfect day. And I always tell my clients, you don't have to wait till tomorrow to start over. You can start over this afternoon. You can start over after the meeting. You can always just take a few minutes. For me, and when I worked in the corporate position, sometimes I had to literally get off the floor, take the elevator down, and go around the building. Outside. I just literally had to be grounded in nature and go outside. You can't do that up north. We were talking about snow and cold earlier on the phone, but again, whatever it is, just a trip down the hall, go to the deli, go visit, a trusted friend, and just get whatever's on your mind off your heart, go back in and start over. Just remember to do that. Stay connected, stay engaged. Again, we talked about it's always about commitment and decision. finding that link to that person so that you can be together in their life and you can help them become a better person. As Tammy said, they'll do anything to support you. I still see friends that we started our very first title company with over 30 years ago. We meet about once a quarter to go out and eat dinner. And it's because we did cover for each other. When they had those bumps in life, when somebody needed a babysitter, they used to store their Christmas gifts in one of our warehouse closets, and we would have wrapping parties after work or on the weekends. I mean, different things you can do to kind of build that rapport. And also just listen to your inner voice, your divine wisdom, I call it. Just kind of step away sometimes from an incident. Don't always react. You're a leader. Stop. Take in all the information, listen, stop and think. You know, we have minds, we have brains, we have souls. Take time to really listen to your heart before you respond. And if you're angry about something, really do figure out that place, whether it's down the elevator and around the building, even twice one time I had to do it, whatever it is, to just kind of get away from the anger, because you won't respond in a way you want to as a real leader. And I highly recommend several of the different books that I've been doing research on for these leadership styles. It's been a great experience to be able to do this. And I've done several presentations about leadership. And it's just really interesting, you know, Dare to Lead, Managing with Passion, which you can still get. It's a very old book, but it's so useful now as much as ever. Anything that Warren Bennis has written, there's so many wonderful leaders that we have. It's a great topic. And I think it excites me to know that at any point in your life, you can become a better leader just because you're choosing to become a better you. Because who you are is your personal reality. That's who you were meant to be. And if you don't step into that and share it with your team, with your family, with your friends, they're missing out on something that no one else can quite give them the way you can. And that's so important in our lives, just very important.
Always be growing.
Always be growing and challenge yourself. Yes.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Thank you very much. That is some great tips, and I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing with us some different information on different leadership styles. And I look forward to seeing more stuff, and maybe we can get together and chat again here in the future.
That sounds great. And I'll share my resources and also the link to that test, because it's a pretty fun thing to do with your team or your family, or if you have students. It's really a lot of fun. They got a lot of fun out of doing that.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Well, thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Natalie.
All right. Bye-bye.